On the raising money side, for specifically talking about an entrepreneur, what are some of the biggest mistakes that you see entrepreneurs making when they are raising capital?
There are a couple. First and foremost is recognizing the difference for when you need equity versus when you need debt. If you go out and you have a purchase order from Target, the last thing you want to do is come to me on the equity front and say, hey, I'd love to partner with you. Like, you've done all the hard work, right? You've got product market fit. You've got a purchase order from Target.
Yeah.
You should not be giving me, well, I obviously pay for it, right? But you should not be giving me a piece of your business to fund those purchase orders. That's the perfect time for a credit option. So I think understanding the difference as far as when the different capital structures that you could use, I think is really important. I think not having a really honest conversation with your potential investor about your time horizon ends up being problematic. To be being completely honest. So circle up, we tend to underwrite to 5x returns when we think about investments that we make, which it's hard to imagine a business is going to grow more than 100% a year for 5 years consistently. So we expect that we are going to be investing in businesses for 5 to 7 years. Sometimes it's less, sometimes it's more, but that's kind of how we think about it. We speak to some founders who are saying like, oh yeah, I'm planning on exiting in 2 years, but I think I can get you to the returns that you're looking for. And you're like, I'm not really sure about that. So and by the way, that could be an amazing outcome for that founder, right? Yeah. It could be an amazing outcome for that founder, for all of the earlier investors, and for another investor. It's just not the right partnership for us.
Sure.
And so really being straightforward and honest about that, I think, is really important. And this is going to sound extremely self-serving. So give me a second to explain it. But I think the other thing that we see is companies raising too much money, and hand in hand with that often is raising it too high of a valuation early. And I recognize that sounds very dicey for someone who's in the venture capital world to be saying, but if you raise a lot of capital, regardless of how genuinely you believe you are capital efficient and that you are not going to waste money, you will. If I have $20 in my pocket, I'm going to find a way to spend it. And so if my business only needed $3 million for the next 2 years, and I go and I raise 8, I'm going to go and I'm going to try a lot of really different, interesting, innovative things, right? I'm going to try new flavor profiles. I'm going to try new distribution partners. I'm going to try a different product line, things that I wouldn't necessarily have done and probably aren't going to get a good ROI versus if I had less money and I was a little bit more tight around that. And so if you're raising a large amount of money early, you typically have to do it at a high valuation, or else you'll end up getting massively diluted, which inherently sounds great, right? Because you're raising at a high valuation. You own more of the business than you would have otherwise, but you have to feel really confident that you're able to grow into that valuation. And I can't tell you, unfortunately, the number of times, like everybody believes they're going to grow into that valuation.
Oh, for sure.
More often than not, people don't. And then when you have to do the next round, no one wants to invest in a down round. The investor doesn't want it. The founder doesn't want it. The other investors don't want it. And there's a stigma that comes with it that's challenging to get over. So those are the handful of things that we've seen.